We were seeing how many of the corals have bleached. The result seems to be, I would say, at a guess, it's about 50%. It's getting worse by the day. Maybe started about 2 weeks ago, with just a little bit here and a little bit there, and now we're seeing whole colonies completely white. So some coral can live for maybe a few days or a few weeks in this bleached state. But if the water temperature doesn't come down, then the coral will die.
It's pretty hard for me to explain how I got into nature conservation. It seems to have been around me for pretty much forever. So I grew up in an area with lots of forests and always went traveling a lot. I started diving already 20 years ago, so I saw a very different ecosystem when I first started diving. And it's almost like a religious feeling that I get when I look at these beautiful intact sites, and then at the same time seeing how everything is being destroyed, how everything is being broken. Just creates this urge in me to start working on that.
At 7 o'clock every morning, Ike Schoenig reaches into his closet for a wetsuit. He puts it on to go diving with friends and volunteers to chronicle the death of coral reefs. The White Plague is believed to be the forerunner of a global environmental catastrophe, and has found its way here. Of course, coral bleaching has been seen before. The White Plague was given its first scientific mention in 1979. Since then, epidemics have broken out time after time. The coral disease recently reached its peak, having eradicated half the world's population.
Ten years ago, the reef was a very pretty, very small little fringing reef with very, very vibrant coral and pretty good fish life. What we've seen very slowly as there's been more and more development, particularly on the land, there's more and more runoff. And yeah, since 2010, so the last 4 years, the reef, we've lost nearly 90% of the reef.
We came to Koh Phangan in 2010 was the first time. We had extremely high sea surface temperatures around here. It was an extremely hot year all over the world. And what we saw around here was a mass coral bleaching, which led to a lot of coral mortality around here. So we started checking around for the Gulf of Thailand, and it turned out that very little research had been done in this area. So we decided to establish a permanent research facility here to take a look at the long-term effects of climate change and other factors around here on coral health.
The marine biologists invested all of their personal savings and money from research grants to establish the Center for Oceanic Conservation Research and Education, CORSI. Now they have their own well-equipped laboratory with everything they need to monitor the water. They can check the temperature, analyze quality and nutrient levels, and keep count of the fish population. All factors that determine the color and life of the reef.
So one of the things we can do around here to actively help with the coral restoration is a method that we're currently testing, which we call coral gardening. So we have one family of corals around here which are not coping very well with the environmental conditions, which is staghorn coral, very strongly branching coral. Very important for the ecosystem because fish use it as a nursery. So one of the problems with the fish we have could be associated with the lack of staghorn coral we have there. So what we try is, as in gardening, we take little pieces of coral and transplant that into different positions in the reef and hope to promote the growth of the coral in these areas. So we have a protected area, a coral nursery, which is in a very good position where we have very little sedimentation. And we grow this coral on this nursery and then take little pieces, glue it on little posts, which makes it easier to plant it into the actual reef, and then hope that we can increase the number of aquacoral which we have around there.
Did you? I think I did. No, you done that one.
Among the many dangers to coral are recreational divers. They can unwittingly cause severe damage. That's why Ike's team started working with local dive centers. The biologists go down with visiting tourists and explain how they should behave underwater to avoid causing harm to sea life. One wrong move or a misplaced foot could damage the ecosystem, and it takes coral reefs dozens of years to recover.
So when we teach our students, and it comes from entry level, so if they've never dived before, all the way up, we teach it all across the board is to protect our local environment. And the way that we do that is we're teaching them good buoyancy skills. We're also advocates of Project Aware. So aware is making sure that people are aware of the environment. So no touching corals, no throwing cigarette butts over, no bags, no taking anything, no taking corals and shells and stuff like that.
Some tour companies, if they come to our snorkeling spot like Kumar, some of them make a little bit education. They explain something about the situation if they know it, and they also tell the customer or the tourists, please don't step on the corals. But the tourists don't know what is coral and what is rock, because some of the corals really look like huge rocks, and if they can't swim anymore and need to relax, then they just step on the corals and have no clue what they do.
So what we're doing today is we're in a very touristy bay here in Koh Phangan, and we're checking water quality. So we're filtrating water, so later in the laboratory we can check for nutrient levels, primarily phosphates and nitrates and ammonium, which have a very big influence on how a coral reef is doing these days. So we are also at the same time checking for algae growth in the actual reef. We're looking at how healthy the coral is, so we're checking for bleaching. We're also checking for coral-algae interactions, checking how much live coral we still have left. And at the same time, we count the fish populations, because the fish are very important for the ecosystem in terms of feeding on the algae, keeping the algae numbers down and controlling the entire growth of the reef.
The coral reef is a complicated and sensitive variety of marine life. Essentially, it's a jellyfish-like polyp inhabited by microscopic algae. The polyp itself can neither move around nor feed independently, whereas the microalgae are able to convert solar energy into life-sustaining sugars. They share their food with the polyp, and that's how the coral gets its nourishment, enabling it to grow.
So we have three factors which are influencing our coral health around here. The most obvious one is temperature. So we've been seeing a rise in ocean temperatures over the last few years. And what happens is, as soon as we hit a certain temperature, 31 degrees Celsius, usually the corals can't maintain the symbiosis they have with the algae around here. So they turn white, they expel the algae, which is a big problem for them because these algae, it's a major food source for them by photosynthesis. As soon as this happens, we have other factors coming in. One big one is eutrophication. It's basically the amount of nutrients, foreign nutrients, coming into the ocean. In this area, we have two main sources of nutrients. So it's tourism on the islands, because the sewage water is not being treated around here, so everything goes straight into the sea. And at the same time, on the mainland, we have very extensive shrimp farms, which also create a lot of nutrients. Now, corals live in competition with algae. So as soon as we increase the nutrient levels, the algae have an advantage in growing, and they overgrow the algae, the coral in the area around here. And then comes the third problem, which is overfishing. Overfishing is a global problem, but the problem that we have around here is the overfishing of reef fishes. And these fishes act as a controlling factor to reduce the algae in the coral reefs. So as soon as we lose the fish which feed on the algae, then we don't have anything to control the algae growth around here, and they grow much faster than coral, so they can overgrow the entire system.
Today we're on a dive site called Samran Pinnacle, which is underneath the water. Nothing comes above the surface, and so quite often the trawl boats, their nets get stuck on the rock, and we were removing a trawling net from the dive site. We took off one net which was very new. This was definitely within the last 2 weeks that net's been there, but there's probably at least 4 or 5 nets, big nets still down there, and big fish traps as well. And the net, to biodegrade, the net takes maybe 5 to 10 years. So it will keep on trapping fish and keep on killing fish for 5 to 10 years.
Maybe something that could be done is, especially a place called Samran Pinnacle, it has a huge net over it most of the time. We don't dive it because it's been fished, and the Thai fishermen don't actually realise that it could be something beautiful. What would be good would be maybe to take one of the boat captains down, show him what his actual net is doing, how it's suffocating the reef, and how there's no fish around.
Several years ago, a United Nations report expressed concerns that the current state of the world's coral reefs was fast approaching the point of no return. Ike is trying to get this message out to the islanders. With his friends and colleagues, he explains to Thai people why sewage treatment is important and why it's crucial to reduce the number of fisheries. The biologist's message is that life on tropical islands would no longer be possible if the reef was allowed to die. The local population, though, has traditionally lived mostly on fish that inhabit the reef, and they use coral limestone to build their homes. The reef also offers them protection by bearing the brunt of the strong currents and waves that hit their shore.
Our main cooperation is with the Thai government around here is through the Department of Marine and Coastal Resources, which has a very large academic portion as well, which is what we collaborate with. So we help them to monitor changes around the islands. We also take care of some of their projects around Koh Phangan, which is primarily the artificial reefs and fish aggregation devices, where we check how this is being accepted by the local population in the ocean and give this information over to the government. We're, so to speak, a seeing eye field station for the government here.
The Thai government has now joined in with efforts to save the coral. Massive artificial reefs made of concrete blocks are being built on the seabed around the islands. Another artificial reef was built from the remains of an old oil platform. The structure attracts fish and makes it impossible for fishermen to catch them. This way, the coral is given the time it so badly needs to grow and recover.
So our big plan that we are working on at the moment is basically a series of very small marine parks, which we call micro-marine parks. And the first one that we're starting with is Sair Rock. Sair Rock is a very intensively dived site in this area and is extremely beautiful. So it already has a lot of media attention, so it's an easy starting point. The idea behind this is to connect two large marine protected areas here in the Gulf of Thailand through a series of small pinnacles. So we want to create a chain connecting these pinnacles. Classically speaking, it is a little counterintuitive because normally you would want a marine park to be extremely big to be very effective. But in this case, we think because these pinnacles are highly isolated, which is scientifically speaking a very good outset for a marine park area, that it is also passively enforcing a much larger area. So we could possibly create a really big area. Now the idea that we have is to do this with relatively little government involvement, so relatively little law changes, which is difficult to do in Thailand. So we are doing a community managed approach.
Для меня, как ни странно, оказался более интересный проект объединения нескольких марин-парков в один, контролировать выполнение этого. Государство принимает некий закон о правилах рыбной ловли, туризма и так далее в этой зоне, но контролировать будет государство и местная власть.
The things that have changed in the last 14 years is maybe the Thais don't appreciate the amount of work the Westerners, the Farangs, do over here to bring in tourism so they can have more restaurants and bigger hotels. We do work together to a point. I think we need to communicate a little bit more that I know we're diving in their fishing areas and they're fishing in our diving areas. At the end of the day, they were here first. So we need to appreciate the fact that we need to live together.
คิดว่าได้สักตกเบ็ดคิดว่าได้สัก100 กิโล
100 kilo.
Yeah, 100 กิโล 100 กิโลถ้า water no good ก็20 กิโล 50 กิโล not sure.
Yeah. Okay.
ตอนนี้1 กิโล
ใช่
1 กิโลก็ 60 บาท 60 บาท not sure name สักฟิต50 บาทฟิตคิงฟีดก็เวิร์กมันนี่สเนปเปอร์ก็มันนี่รีเทิร์นnot sure แล้วก็ตอนที่นี้ no problem ตอนที่ no have wave บิ๊กเวฟไอ้ยาวันโบสโอ้ปวดหัว
นาริบูไม่เป็นไร
แต่ของพี่คิดโอ้โหต้องสลาชะโลกล้ำโนโคตรเลย
ใช่
But they also need to realise that they need to do sensible fishing rather than throwing huge nets over, killing everything just to get one take on the boat. So we have to find our happy medium with working with the Thai people and them also working with us, because without us, no tourism, and it's just bringing it up.
All over the world, scientists are still arguing about whether the state of coral reefs is indeed cause for concern. Some biologists say they're like cockroaches and could survive a nuclear war. Others claim that coral will slowly adapt to environmental changes and become heat-resistant. Their opponents, though, with Ike and his team among them, maintain that the environment is changing too quickly, meaning that coral isn't being given the time it would need to adapt. They say that by 2050 the marine ecosystem could collapse, with only algae making it through, and that's why microorganisms are in such desperate need of help to survive.
We accept volunteers coming into our research facility around here to help us with the day-to-day monitoring around here. Our volunteers have to pay for the program simply because it's very expensive what we're doing here. The dive activities that we do, they cost a lot of money, and we don't have any outside funding at the moment. So as soon as we manage to find any outside funding sources for this, of course it would be free for the volunteers to stay here. In general, our volunteers are trained for at least a period of 10 days before they work with us in the field, which gives them the background to work anywhere else in the world where they have a comparable ecosystem. So especially in tropical coral reef ecosystems, they learn how to identify corals, how to identify common coral diseases, how to identify fishes of the area, and how to do the methods that they need to do to help monitoring changes in these ecosystems.
I'm doing my master thesis here from my studies in Germany. So I've been sent here from the ZMT Bremen for the Center for Marine Tropical Research, and we monitor coral reef here just in another bay. It's called Mahat, and we're going to look at the benthic coral cover and the fishes and also the water parameters, and compare this to data which were collected several years ago to see how the reef is developing over time. Yeah.
Самое простое, чем я могу ему помогать, и я реально это делаю, это мне доставляет удовольствие и не требует от меня финансовых никаких затрат, только временные. Я снимаю для него. То есть, если он мне вечером звонит, говорит так и так, мы идем туда-то, нам необходимо это снять для того, чтобы показать отчет или сделать презентацию для правительства, или просто на YouTube выложить, или там для Facebook. Ну, то есть я беру камеру, еду, снимаю.
It's not too late. I mean, of course, we've lost a lot of the diversity and health of the reef, but it's still there. We still see the same coral, we still see the same fish, so they're still there. If, of course, we could change something, then there's a chance that maybe this can come back, or at least we don't lose what we have still. So not all hope is lost. This is alive. All right. I can show you a dead piece in a minute. It's alive so far. Okay. So this is alive. You see, it has the brown color. Sorry, little fella. And this is dead. This is covered in algae. And this has just died. So how many crabs there are? Look at those little crabs. See, dead, very clearly dead, and alive here, very healthy. Right, let's get that in the water before.
my motives for doing this job, for working this, are actually very egoistical. It's a little bit difficult to explain, maybe it's even a little bit silly, but I just like it so much. In fact, there's certain parts of the world which I really love that I want to keep it. I don't think it's okay to destroy it, to give it away. I want to keep it for myself, and if other people want to enjoy it too, that's fine by me, but as primary, I like it so much, I want it to be around for longer.